Part of my love affair with languages and cultures started when I moved to Germany in, I think it was 2010, and for an Erasmus program, so to study abroad. And it opened up a whole new world to me, and the world of, learning a foreign language and getting used to and living in a different culture and begin to understand the nuances of how people communicate differently in one culture and another. And it was also at this time that I first started to teach English as a foreign language. And I was really thrown in at the deep end, helping business people and professionals, with communicating in English at work. And from the very, very first session, I just absolutely adored it. And so when I came back to Ireland, I decided to train officially as an English language trainer. And then I was back on the plane again to Germany after that course. And again, really working with professionals to help them communicate at work in English. And so my background, I suppose, professionally is in English language training. And in 2017, I started AllTalk Training. And at the time, I suppose the start of AllTalk Training was really in Brazil. So I started to work online in 2015, 2016. I wanted to be able to go from one culture to another culture and be able to continue my work wherever. And so, but at the time, in order to be able to move with my work, I went from teaching English to translation, which I had also experience of doing when I was living in Germany. And translation was just an easier thing, I suppose, for me to imagine I could do online. But in Brazil, I was very lonely for, English trainees. I just missed it so much. And online training, of course, it was already happening at the time, but it wasn't such a big thing. It wasn't obviously as common as it is now. And I wasn't even sure if it could work. But I tried it, and I got my first trainees, teaching them from Brazil. They were based in Germany. And from the very first class again, I thought, okay, this is so possible. This is so enjoyable. And why am I not doing this? So really that was not officially the start of AllTalk Training, but it essentially was the start of the process and the idea that later became AllTalk Training in 2017. And so AllTalk Training now, we help professionals, we focus on business English. So we are a language training business. We do focus on English, but, for the talk today, we're really speaking about any foreign language. And hopefully what we're speaking about today can help anybody, whether it's speaking in English that, is their foreign language, or whether they're an English speaker and they want to, improve their confidence for speaking in German or whatever. So I suppose that would be a background to me professionally, and also to the start of AllTalk Training.
There we go. A wealth of experience coming to this show. What a pleasure, Brigid. So you lived, okay, I knew this, that you had been to Germany, but I don't think you told me the bit about Brazil, which is super interesting. So to do what you do, I'm going to assume, and based on my experience as well, it is important to actually have experience what it is like to speak in a foreign language as well, ourselves. Being out there, experiencing multiculturality, which is like a long, cumbersome word for me to say, but I said it, multiculturality. So I'm going to ask you something now to dive deeper into the topic. Thank you very much for the incredible introduction. I can see people signing up and get in touch with you after this presentation right away. So, I traveled, and I know what it takes to start speaking up in a foreign language. And there is the confidence element, especially when people, for the good or the bad, sometimes without even intentions, they mock you, they make fun of us. Yesterday, I was sharing the first time I'm in the States and I'm super excited. And they say, how are you, Jose? And in America, they tend to say a lot, most of the time they say, well, not most of the time, but they tend to say awesome. But I used my Spanish A and I went, awesome, I'm awesome. But I was so excited. And they laughed at me so badly that I just went like, wow, do I want to try this again? Am I ready for this? So where do I pull in or draw in resources from? How can I become more confident to deal with these circumstances as well? So I guess making my point now, what what is it about confidence that is so important when we're learning a foreign language?
I was thinking about this, I know it's important, but coming up to the talk today, I was thinking, well, how important really is it? And I was thinking about trainees that I've had over the years. And I suppose, for example, the first thing to say is that every single trainee that we have had, and I have had, prior to starting AllTalk Training, and probably every other English language trainer or language trainers in general have had, one of the most important and most requested things is, I want to be more confident speaking that language. And it doesn't matter if the person has a lower level in the language at the time, or if they are almost native speaker level or their native speaker level, it's still, the request always comes back to, I want to be more confident. And then I was thinking about some trainees that we've had over the years. And really, we have had people who have had amazing English skills, but they do not speak up in meetings. They do not share their thoughts and ideas. And it all comes back to the fact that they are not confident enough to do it. So, you can learn all the grammar you want, all the vocabulary you want, all the idioms and lovely phrases and phrasal verbs and everything. But if you don't have the confidence to use them, then all those other things are wasted in a way, or they're just not being put to use. So in a sense, confidence is almost everything, because you have to be able to be comfortable and confident enough to use the language. Otherwise, why do you have it? Or why would you want to be able to do all the grammar and vocab things if you're not actually going to use it? So confidence is absolutely essential. And we actually carried out a survey last year for non-native speakers working in, multicultural teams in Ireland. And over a third of people in that questionnaire, despite having really high, so they were all advanced, almost all advanced English speakers, and they still said that, over a third of them still said that they will not share their ideas in meetings. They'll not put themselves forward to lead a project, for example, to really kind of take the next step in their career, to show that they are, improving their skills in the workplace. They'll shy away from leading a project that they would have no reservations about doing if it was in their native language. So confidence is really, it's essential.
Absolutely. And Ada is saying that mindset is key. Of course, also that as well. Well, yes. Confidence is part of all of that mindset. So what would you say, as you were sharing this, which is key, then there are these people that, yes, I understand. I mean, there might be different elements happening. There might be fear of failure, fear of being judged, not being liked, not being in control, as they could be in their own language, many different elements. What would you say to them? And I'll give you the same example. I come to you, Brigid, today because in the past people made fun of me, and I don't know how to overcome that. Yeah, they mock me every time I say awesome. They just laughed so hard that I just didn't want to say awesome or anything close to it anymore. Of course, I overcame that. It took me a while, but I didn't have the resources when that happened that day. I felt terrible, and it knocked down my confidence, and not just my confidence, but who I was as a person, my identity. It does impact some other areas of your personality, who you are as a human being, and then how you go and interact with others. So what would you say in terms of some quick, well, I'm not going to call them quick, so some things that you could share for people in my situation to be able to overcome this? And then I've got a list of questions, and at some point we're going to invite the audience as well to get their questions ready. Over to you, Brigid.
Well, I think first let's look at the reasons why, that people might suffer from lack of confidence when they're trying to communicate in a foreign language. You mentioned some of them already, fear of being judged by others, fear of being laughed at. And that's a very interesting thing, at the beginning as well. I'm sure I would have been quite self-conscious, trying to communicate in German if people laughed at me. But what I noticed was whenever people laughed at me and, the words that I used incorrectly or whatever it was, those were the things that I really remembered, and I was able to correct them very quickly because they stood out so much in my mind. So I was able to shift, I suppose, what could be this awfully negative thing to a positive, that, oh my God, I'll never forget that now, and forever I'm going to say that correctly from now on. And that's just so important. So one of the things is, you know, fear of being judged, fear of being laughed at, feeling self-conscious about your accent. Maybe you're comparing yourself to other non-native speakers of that language. So if it's a non-native English speaker and you have a colleague who's also a non-native speaker, and, you know, in the meeting, you know, you're listening to them and they're all confident and easy and, you know, speaking no problem. And very often people then see that and hear that and they think, I'm not as good as them, I am not going to open my mouth. And that's very, very common, and it's obviously not helpful for that person who is comparing themselves to others. Things like you may sound differently in the foreign language. You know, you may not feel like yourself, you know, you may sound different. And because the culture is also a bit different, you might have to behave a little bit differently. And so you just might not just really feel like, you know, like yourself and comfortable to just speak as you normally would in your own language. You might be afraid of offending people. Again, it kind of is linked in with culture here, but very often, you know, people might hold back from expressing their thoughts or opinions because they feel like they don't know how to do it in a culturally sensitive way. They haven't learned it at any point, but they do know. For example, in Ireland, we tend to communicate in a quite an indirect manner. So we're just not direct at all. For people who live here and who come from a different culture where, you know, they tend to communicate more directly, they're afraid then, you know, they can't just translate word for word, because culturally it won't come across very well, and you could be seen as too direct and impolite. And when people recognize that that's what people perceive them as, then they're afraid to say anything anymore, because of course they don't want to be offending people. They don't want to be seen as impolite or unprofessional. So that's something that can impact the kind of, you know, confidence to speak up. I mean, there's just so many reasons. Maybe humor as well. You know, maybe you're the type of person who in your native language relies on humor a lot. Now, some people do, some people don't. But if you are the type of person who loves humor and really, you know, relies on it for your communication, you know, bringing that into a foreign language just might not work. And all of a sudden, the thing that you rely on to connect with people is not as effective anymore. So these can all impact, you know, how confident you feel. I'm sure there's others that I've, oh, of course, the fear of making mistakes. And, you know, I mentioned earlier about judging, you know, fear of people judging you. But actually, the biggest thing probably that impacts your confidence is you judging yourself. Maybe depending on the type of person you are, but most people judge themselves quite harshly. And therefore, if they feel like they're making mistakes, grammatical errors, for example, in English, then they can judge themselves quite harshly. And that can really, really impact, you know, how they show up, if they speak up or not, at work or with others.
People, are you taking notes? This is fantastic, Brigid. Thank you so much. And well, so many things. I do like the element of the indirect communication, which also happens in the UK as well. So, you know,
yes.
And I find that very interesting because, yes, I am a bit direct. And I remember at the beginning, people saying, you're a bit rude. Oh, okay. So
well, this is exactly what happens. Yeah. And thankfully you didn't stop speaking up, but some people do when they hear this. They think, oh, people think I'm rude, so therefore I should say as little as possible in order to keep the peace. And that's not ideal for you as a professional, you know.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And there is one thing I would like to share on this topic as well. Yeah, you may have mentioned it in your own way. For me personally, since I started, I've always had, going back to the mentality, the mindset is just, you know what, dare to mess up. And I'm not saying just go out there willing to mess up, but dare to mess up, dare to try something new. I mean, I'm going to go back to the silly, awesome example, because I was so excited, you know, yeah, I'm going to share what I'm learning. And I love that reframe which you used. Yeah, so if people laughed at it, I know I will remember that, and then I can practice it, and then I can change it and say it correctly next time. So reframing is so powerful. I love that. Look, let's move on to the next thing. Oh, goodness me. So much good juices flowing in this conversation. I don't have an accent, of course, but you know, there are people out there who do. So for those who have got an accent, so what people, stop laughing. It's not funny. I haven't got an accent. I haven't got an accent, mate, because I'm Cockney now, innit? So okay, that was very bad. I'm gonna apologize. I'm not. Brigid, what would you say to people with accents? Would you say,
first of all,
yeah, over to you. Take it over, because I know this is such a huge topic. Unpack it in your own way. I'm just curious to see what you got to say. Over to you.
Of course. So, well, I suppose, first of all, everybody has an accent. There's accent. It's not people with accents and people without accents, right? Everybody has an accent. I have an accent that maybe is not very desirable, actually. You know, for other native English speakers, they might hear my accent and think, yeah, it doesn't sound very sophisticated, you know, but for non-native speakers, you know, they just have this idea of a native accent and a non-native accent. And my accent is non-native. And, you know, but I want to be native. But really, you know, there's so many different accents with, you know, there's, again, if we're thinking about English, there's the native English speaking accents, right? But there's thousands of those. And then there's also, you know, a Spanish speaker speaking English and their accent in English, or a German speaker and their accent, you know, the kind of typical ones. But of course, that also varies as well, depending on, you know, your original accent in your own language, which can be different from one German person to another and from one Spanish speaker to another. So, you know, it's not a case of some people have accents and some don't. Everybody has an accent. The one of the requests that we get quite a lot, I suppose, is I want to lose my accent, you know, just lose it. and actually, if you want to lose your accent, really, I suppose they mean is that I want to sound like a native speaker. And I suppose our approach to performing well in a foreign language and helping people do that is, how much energy do you have? And where is the most important places to put that energy? You know, what are the most important points to work on using that energy? And trying to sound like a native speaker would be much lower down on the list of the priorities of, you know, what you should or can do in order to be a really effective communicator in a foreign language. So, because first of all, it would take immense energy and time and work to sound like a native speaker. First of all, you have to identify which native accent you want to sound like, right? Because, you know, there's so many. But then the energy that you would have to put in to, you know, sound like a native is immense. It would be much better used. The energy would be much better used in making sure that your accent is clear. So you might not lose your accent, but you can identify the very specific points that your accent affects, you know, the very specific sounds that you find difficult because of your native language, and work on clarifying, or not clarifying, but making those sounds clear in the language that you want to communicate in. And all of a sudden then you have quite an unrealistic goal of, I want to sound like a native, down to a very realistic goal of, I want to make sure that people understand me easily. And then you can work on those really specific points. And I think that's so important. Like, if you want to sound like a native and there's a specific accent that you want to work on and sound like that, then go ahead and do it. But if you want to progress, you know, if you want to be more confident and progress in your career, and you want to be able to do that in a shorter time as opposed to a longer time, then, you know, take the much more achievable and realistic goal of making your pronunciation clearer rather than trying to lose your accent. And I loved the title of your talk yesterday, Jose, with "Your accent is your asset." I mean, really, you know, the phrase, people do business with people. Like, the people behind anything is the most important thing. The person behind your accent is the most important thing. The connection that you make with people is the most important thing. And, you know, people will overlook your accent once they, you know, they see what your intentions are, what your ideas are, what your input is. And as long as all of that is positive and you can share it clearly and confidently, then your accent becomes totally irrelevant. And Jose, for example, with you, I really associate you now with your very distinct and specific accent, which is a mix of a lot of things. And it's wonderful. And I know that there is accent bias. And you can be judged negatively because you have a foreign accent in whatever language it is that you have. But again, the energy for you to try to sound native to overcome that bias is much too much, and it's a misuse of energy in my eyes, where you could be using the energy to prove your skills and your experience and yourself in other ways. And really, we need to work on the other side as well to get rid of that accent bias. Anyway, accent bias also happens within native accents, right? So just you sounding like a native might not even help, to overcome that accent bias. I would say, if you have this idea that, the most important thing about your English is that, the language that you want to speak is you want to lose your accent, just rethink it maybe. Would it be better to put your energy somewhere else?
Brigid, I was about to drop my mic with yours. What a fantastic contribution. I love that. And it is so close to my heart. So many incredible points. People, take a moment to take this in, to reflect on it. One of the things you said, the energy element. Wow, how important that is. And actually, when you focus that energy then on just being yourself, bringing the best version of yourself to any human interaction. And yes, learning how to speak clearly, because then people are taking their energy to understand you. And depending on the context and everything else, they may disconnect. They may not have enough energy to listen to you speak. So there are so many different things going on in the background. And I also like to share and reinforce this point, which is the element of the ownership and the responsibility. It's not just ourselves doing the best we can with what we've got as well, but also other people knowing and challenging those biases. How on earth is it, there is some research, and I'm sure that, highlight the fact, for example, Italians or Spanish speakers, when they speak in English, they sound sexy, sophisticated. But if you go to Asia, Middle East, it's not the case. So there are so many things that, and then, as you say, we're labeling a human being with a huge generalization on an element about who they are. But what about the person that you mentioned, the person that is behind? Let's carry on with the session, because I want to hear more. I want to ask you more questions. We'll have some more people joining as well, so welcome everybody. Now I'm going to go back to you mentioned some of the things, people speaking in a foreign language. Imagine now I'm going to use Rashmi. So Rashmi is speaking in English, and she's given the opportunity to lead a project, but then this is not true, by the way, because I sometimes need to take stuff from her because she wants to do it all. But if that was the case, so Rashmi, she says, well, I don't want to do it. I reject it. I say no because of my accent. Or sorry, not because of just the accent, because of, my lack of confidence when it comes to doing this. What would you say, how would you recommend people approach this in terms of their mindset? What can they begin to change? What can they do?
Well, I think, again, let's understand, what's the cause of that. And, accent might be some of it, especially if the project involves, having to actually speak a lot in front of people, giving presentations, or it might be other things. The biggest things that hold people back from, taking things by the two with the two hands, is fear of being judged by others, and basically them judging themselves. And we've mentioned this already, but just to give you an idea of the fear of being judged by others is completely unhelpful. And actually, earlier at the end, I was going to say earlier this year, but at the end of last year, we carried out another study of native English speakers who were working with non-natives to see, well, what do people really think? Because we know what they should think or what we'd like them to think, but what do people who are working with non-native speakers really think about their non-native speaking colleagues? And 95% of the respondents in the survey said that we do not judge people on their use of the language. We judge them on their input, the same as everybody else. And okay, there's 5% there that maybe need to still work on that a bit, but 95% is huge, you know. So almost everybody will accept that you have a different accent, that you might make some mistakes here or there, but they're mostly interested in your contribution, you know, again, your thoughts, your suggestions for improvements, you know, your output, your actual work done. So this idea of, you know, oh God, what will others think of it, is completely, I wouldn't say it's an irrational fear, you know, but it's not necessary, it's not helpful. And if you have that fear, then let's try to, you know, accept that, you know, that actually others don't judge like that, like I think they do. And that, I think, can be very helpful. And then with the other point of judgment, which is judging yourself, then again, thankfully, it's with ourselves. So we can work on that. You know, we don't have to rely on others to be nice to us or to be accepting of us to change it. Because it's a judgment of ourselves, we can work on that ourselves. And this is where mindset really comes into play. So mindset is important for all of what we're talking about today, the accent, everything. But in terms of judging yourself, then the mindset is really important. So for example, you know, where does this harsh judgment come from of, you know, God, I made a grammatical mistake there now. Oh my God, it's awful. End of the world. I'm not going to say anything else because I'm just going to make a fool of myself. All of this like internal dialogue that goes on is just detrimental to you actually being yourself, speaking up, showing up, contributing. And so how do we reframe that? Because again, it is reframing. We just need to reframe it. Where does it come from, firstly, though? So I suppose if we, you know, many trainees that we work with have had English training in the past, or they have learned English mostly in school. And very, very often the only way that their English has been measured, you know, the progress in their English has been measured up to this point, is their grammatical performance, you know, how well they fill in blanks and do all these grammatical exercises, and maybe vocabulary as well, you know, how much words they have kept in here in their head that they may or may not need on a daily basis. And that has been the measure of their progress in the language, in the foreign language that they're learning. But in the real world, you know, language is completely different. The requirement or the reason why you learn language is completely, it's not to get a grammar test 100% correct. It's not to, you know, to remember all the words that were on a list. It's to communicate with people. It's to connect with people. It's to share your input. It's to, you know, reach a common goal in the workplace, like to work on a project together. You need to communicate. You need to know what each other is doing. So it's all about just making sure that people understand you. And so if we can get rid of measuring our worth in, you know, of our skills by grammar and vocabulary, then we can begin to, you know, reframe it and measure our worth in, you know, what work am I getting done here? Who am I communicating with? And do they understand me? You know, can I get my ideas and my thoughts across? Even if my language level isn't so good yet, can I still do it? And people do it with very low level of language. Sometimes people can still communicate their thoughts and ideas. And at the end of the day, that is the most important thing. And that's where your real worth is, you know? So if we can stop judging ourselves and placing our worth on our grammar and start, you know, reframing it and placing our worth on what we can contribute, then, you know, it's a whole different story. You know, you appreciate that actually I'm doing a good job. Okay, I made a grammar mistake, but they still understood me. That's not the end of the world. I can learn from it, you know, if I want to improve. But the point is that I communicated well. And so again, this shift in the mindset is just, you know, it's I would say it's life-changing. It might be a bit dramatic, but it certainly will be very beneficial for, you know, your progress in terms of career or profession, or even just in the social circle as well, right? Making friends and building relationships with colleagues in the canteen. Sometimes people are even afraid to speak in these circumstances, and that's also so important. So if we can get rid of that negative self-judgment, we're flying it.
You know what, Brigid? Well, I'm not going to paraphrase everything you said. There's no need for it either. I was just processing some of the key elements and the judging. And you said, well, this may not be, okay, one of the things you said, this may not be life-changing. And I think you downplay that bit, because I think it can be. Imagine, well, people, we judge ourselves every day. And that is, it can be, looking for analogies, it's like death by 1,000 cuts. Every day we cut ourselves a little bit deeper. Every day. Now we begin to do what you just suggested, and reframing and focusing on the contribution instead of the mistakes we're making. Right away, we start building up ourselves, our relationships. The more we connect with others, the more we can impact more people. That ripple effect kicks in. I also want to appreciate so much what you do, Brigid, and well, I know what I wanted to say was inviting people. Yeah, I'm getting emotional. I'm getting emotional because what you do, and then people speaking in foreign languages, the effort it takes and everything else. But what we are all doing, speaking in a foreign language, and then people like yourself helping for that to happen, is creating more connections, and it's part of a growth commonality worldwide. So we're being able to communicate. If I didn't speak English, I wouldn't be here. You wouldn't be here, So that's the point I want to also drive home today. So important. Yes, I was getting emotional. Thank you so much for kind of highlighting that, because otherwise I wasn't going to go into tears. But the thing is, I'm so passionate about this, and you speak about it in such an impactful way. And that really, it gets me. Okay, let me move away from this one and ask you another question. When it comes to speaking in a foreign language, what else would you say to people? What other tips would you have up your sleeve that you could share with us today? Look, these are some more things you could do. And then after that, I would like to open up for questions from you, incredible audience, for listening as well. Get at least one question ready. Ada, Amir, Eda, Eunice, Herman, Rasmi, Talita, welcome today. Talita as well. So any more tips, anything else you would share, Brigid?
Yeah, absolutely. So I suppose, the mindset and all of that is kind of a bigger picture thing. It's something that kind of is big, that has to be worked on. It doesn't mean it's difficult to work on it. It's just, it just is something, I suppose, that's a bit bigger picture about it. But some of the really basic practical things that you can do to help you in particular situations is, for example, if you have, I remember going to the doctor my first couple of weeks in Germany, and my German was really terrible. And I remember being just terrified that I'm not going to be able to explain, what my problem to the doctor, and I'm not going to be able to understand what he says to me. Or she, well, it was a he in the end, but when I was preparing, I was thinking, oh my God, how am I going to manage this? And so I basically took out a notepad and I wrote down all the things that I wanted to say in English. I just thought about the situation in English, and I made some notes. What was the vocabulary that I didn't know? Not because my German was terrible, but just because I never had this experience before. So it was new language I had to learn. And then I thought about, and what is the doctor likely to say to me? What is the language that they're likely to use with me? So that, when this situation happens, I am prepared at least, and I can understand some words that I know I don't know at this stage. And so I wrote them all down in English first, and then I was able to Google them or check in the dictionaries and see, okay, well, this is the word I need to explain my problem, or these are the words. And these are the typical things that a doctor might use for my situation, so that I can, have some chance of understanding in the situation much better. And it was the best thing ever. I went in absolutely in a ball of nerves thinking, oh, this is going to be a disaster. And then I went in, I was able to explain my problem. He understood, no problem. And then when he was giving me the information about what I needed to do, some of the language that I had checked before I went in allowed me to either understand first thing, you know, what he was telling me, or I had some of the language that I needed to clarify with him. And so this is something that I think it's a skill that is totally under what do you say? It's not promoted enough. It's not mentioned enough. When we're in the language learning classroom, you know, it's like, here's all the language you'll ever need, and here's, you know, all the language that you'll ever hear. And sometimes it's just not like that in the real world. And we have to prepare for situations that we don't know the language for, but we know that we can learn it, and we know that we can do that ourselves. We don't need a trainer to hold our hands. We have the ability to check that information ourselves and prepare for the situation. So I think in order to feel more confident going into situations that you're kind of nervous about because you've never really had this situation before, or it could be an interview in English, for example, it could be going into a meeting about, you know, a very specific agenda that you know what we need to talk about, but you're not really confident talking about that topic. Take 5 or 10 minutes before it just to scribble down those few words that you think you're going to say yourself, or you think you're going to hear, and prepare yourself. And it really doesn't have to take a lot of time, but it will benefit you so much, and you'll feel better going into that situation as well. You know, you'll feel more confident going in because you have more language that will help you in it. And another thing I think that is undervalued, or you know, it's not mentioned enough again in, you know, language skills training, is the ability to clarify information. You know, the ability to you know, first of all, the confidence to, but also the ability to ask someone to repeat something. Now, asking somebody to repeat something is only one way to clarify, but unfortunately, it's often the only way that people learning a language are taught. You know, they're not taught other ways to clarify. I think because of that, people, you know, who are speaking in a foreign language feel bad about having to clarify information. But if you think about it, you do that all the time in your own native language, right? It's not unusual for people to clarify, you know, what somebody has said. But there's this thing that if you're communicating in a foreign language, you might feel, oh, but if I have to clarify information, it shows that I don't understand. So my English is terrible, or my German is terrible, or whatever language it is that you're speaking. That's not true. We have to clarify things all the time. And it's much better and more professional to clarify information than to pretend that you've understood or hope that you've understood correctly and go away with the incorrect information and act on that, right? So it's so much better to clarify the information. So other ways that you can clarify information is, you know, can you repeat that please, is the most common one, but also can you rephrase that? And that gives a clear signal as well to the speaker that I actually didn't really understand the words that you used there, which can happen. So I want you to say it in a different way. You know, I want you to make it clear to me by using different words. It's totally underused, that phrase. And also, you know, instead of saying, can you repeat that please, all the time, because you do feel self-conscious if you start saying the same thing all the time. And even if you're doing it in your native language, you can get to feel self-conscious. So you might say, for example, I'm sorry, I didn't quite get the last bit that you said. Could you repeat that part? You know, so that you can show that, yes, I understand you, but I just didn't get a tiny piece of that information, you know, and I want to hear it again, if that's okay. So, you know, these very practical things, if you get comfortable doing them, can help you so much with your confidence and how you interact with people and how likely you are to actually speak up in your foreign language.
Love those, Brigid. Just to recap quickly, I love the fact, well, preparation is key, I think, in everything we do in life.
Yeah.
And I love that exercise of, in my mind, I was putting myself in the shoes of the doctor. So as you say, what is he going to ask me? And then you prepare accordingly. Powerful strategy. Love it. And then I'm going to use this one with my brother and my wife and everyone else moving forward. Would you please rephrase that? I think that is so powerful, because you're right. We always get stuck with the same one and then asking the same question twice. Now I feel a bit, okay, what's going on here? So can you rephrase that, or the subtlety of that, just that little bit? So can you just repeat the last bit of it?
Yeah.
So, which is, yeah, sometimes it's the only thing you need for that to make sense. I love it. Well, Herman, there you go. Can you rephrase that, buddy? Cool. People, thank you so much, Brigid. I'm loving this. I think we should potentially extend this to 2 or 3 hours. Extract all the juices on this until you're dry. People, any questions? I would like to run for at least 10 more minutes and then we can wrap up because I have another meeting at 11, so I don't want to be late for that one. So any questions? Who's going to ask the first question? Don't say, Jose, you do it, because I've asked a few already. Is it Eunice? Who is going to ask the first question?
I think I have a question. Yeah, I have to ask this and then rush back to work. Hi, Brigid. Okay, this question is about see, based on the movies that you watch. I am from Africa, actually. I'm from Ghana. See how they depict how Africans speak. It shows that like it sometimes come out as a bit dumb, if I should say that. Sorry. So it means that if I'm going out and speaking English, it comes out, for me, it sometimes sounds, I have already lost my confidence even before standing in front of people, because I've already thought about this is how people are going to see me based on the things that I've seen on TV, based on the things that I see on TV, how they depict how we speak. So based on that, and how don't you think that society also has a role to play in this, in how they depict other people's accents, with like comparing the accents with the other people? That is my question. That is that they also have a role to play in that part.
So for example, if we're talking about a non-native English speaker and an English speaker communicating with each other, that the native speaker has a responsibility. That's what you're getting at, Eunice, I think, is it?
So my question is basically speaking the English language, or even speaking an African language.
Whatever it is, yeah.
It sometimes somehow like an African language sounds funny. So the person has already in mind that the language the person is going to speak is funny.
Yes.
So how do I reposition myself in that aspect? Like, I mean, and then don't you think that how other people depict other people's language also plays a big role in everything?
Absolutely. Yeah. And at AllTalk Training, this is something that we are really passionate about. You know, we want to share the message that the responsibility is not on one person in the conversation. The responsibility for, you know, perceiving the person as they are and not as the person with the funny accent, for example, or the funny way of speaking, or who seem to be rude, for example, like Jose said. The responsibility for kind of uncovering the real person is on both sides, you know. So there's only so much that you know, you as a non-native speaker or a person with a very different accent, even if you're a native speaker, but you have a very different accent that's perceived as funny by others, then the responsibility is very much also on the other person to get over their bias or to address their bias, that you know, that I perceive this accent as funny and therefore I don't take this person as seriously. So that's also very much their responsibility. Absolutely. Yeah. So unfortunately, as you know, as a person with a funny accent, you know, or an accent that's perceived as funny, you can't really control their bias. So you just have to put your best foot forward all the time. And if there's nuance about how you communicate in a certain culture, then try to learn those things. But thankfully, there's also, you know, even Jose talking about your accent is your asset yesterday. This is a movement, I suppose, that's part of the diversity and inclusion in, you know, initiative that's very prevalent at the moment, that is to help people to understand that they have biases and to make sure that they don't judge people based on their funny accents, you know. So yes, it's absolutely everybody's responsibility to address this properly.
Brigid, can I also contribute quickly?
Yeah.
Eunice, there are different ways. I mean, I give you my example. Can you imagine that every time I'm going to speak up or present, I'm thinking I'm the guy with the accent, but actually for the negative, and then that's impacting my identity? And what I stand for, and then it connects with my limiting beliefs and everything else. So right away, I'm feeling like my voice is not going to project the same. My body language is not going to be there, nothing. I only want to plant this seed, this tiny seed in your brain. Look, if you had a funny accent, we wouldn't potentially be working. Eunice is sometimes supporting us as well, because I like funny people, but funny in the way that they enjoy what they do and, you know, have a sense of humor and all of that. There's nothing funny about the way you speak. I find it super interesting. Always our accents connected with our roots. Africa is the oldest continent on earth, people. I mean, that's powerful. You've got the roots, you've got the strength, you've got whatever you want to add to it when you speak. The more things you add to that element in your mindset, the way in which you think, the sequences of thoughts that you have, the more power you're going to have when you actually stand up or speak up. So instead of thinking, oh, I'm the one with the funny accent, I'm the one with the roots, for example, apart from, you know, the power that you bring when you speak, which I love, by the way, but I'm biased. Anyone else? People, more questions? Oh, goodness me, we're running out of time. People, some more questions. I think we can still fit in a couple, and then we give Brigid the opportunity to wrap up today as well. Rashmi.
Thank you so much, Brigid, for, sorry, I did pronounce your name correctly.
Perfect.
Rashmi, higher up. I shared your story yesterday, and I said that you now shout. So give us a shout.
Hello, Brigid. Thank you very much for today's session. It is completely relatable to me. Like as Jose shared, while speaking, I feel lack of confidence and also the element of judgment. Getting judged by others and also self-judgment. That is the most deep thing in me. Before going to any speaking opportunity, I just rehearse what I'm going to say. I just make the sentence or line that I'll convey in this way and what people are going to think about this. Though I know those solution which you shared, I know like we can reframe these things, and also we can divert our attention from being judged to what like message we are sharing. But at the point of time, my attention is only toward like what people are going to think and how I am going to convey. And I underestimate myself and start self-judgment thing. So how I can overcome that?
How can you overcome the self-judgment in that point? So I think again, I think it's like, you know, I'm not a professional in public speaking, but I know that one of the important things is you're not there for yourself, you're there for your audience, so to speak. You know, the most important people in the room, if you're doing a public speaking event, is the audience. The most important thing is that you connect with the audience, that you communicate your point, and that you are, you know, addressing the things that are important for them or interesting for them. And it's actually, you know, by not thinking about yourself and your performance so much and thinking more about your audience and serving them, so to speak, that, you know, really helps to change the mindset that, you know, well, I'm not so worried now if I stutter or, you know, if I forget some of the presentation or what I wanted to say, because I'm here not to, you know, be a performer. I'm here to deliver a message and to my audience. And I think if you take a similar idea, you know, when you're preparing to speak, you know, even if it's just you with a colleague and you're a little bit more nervous speaking with that colleague because, you know, maybe you compare yourself to them and that makes you feel insecure, or maybe they're a native speaker and that makes you feel insecure. So in that case, if you just reframe again your focus from how I'm, you know, making my sentences and how grammatically correct I am to, well, the main objective here is for me to communicate with this person and to make sure that they understand me, to make sure I understand them, and to make sure that when we finish our conversation, we both have the information that we need to continue on and work on this project together, for example. So if you reframe, you know, take it away from yourself. And I that sounds like, oh, you're selfish if you think about yourself. You're not. It's not a selfish thing. It's a you know, it's a self self-confidence thing. So take it away from yourself and make it about, I need to make sure that they understand. And even if that includes a grammatical mistake here or there, that doesn't matter, you know, because the most important thing is that they understand. You know, the most important thing is not that I make sure I say everything with no grammar mistakes, right? So just reframe it and think about, you know, the connection, the communication, and that should help you to, you know, just feel better going into that conversation. And once you start in the conversation with that frame of mind, you'll forget yourself, you know, in a few minutes. You know, you'll forget that you know, I don't need to be worried about grammar anymore, you know, and hopefully anyway, you'll forget that and it'll leave you at least temporarily, and you can continue with the main objective of that conversation.
Thank you so much. Yes, that like I find it like applicable. I can apply it. I can like test it whether I am able to work on it or not. So thank you.
Test it. And the thing is, this won't change overnight, right? Because you've had years probably of judging yourself, and you've had years of maybe learning, you know, a language somewhere else where, you know, you have been judged on your grammar. You know, you've been told that's not correct, you need to correct that. And so it's difficult to just poof, you know, it's all gone now. So it will take time. You just have to remind yourself all the time, you know, that the most important thing here is communication.
Yes, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Boom, bang, boom. Wow. Thank you so much, Rasmi, for that question. And yeah, as you said, it is applicable, so apply it. As I always like to say, I don't care how much you know, but what you do with that knowledge. So Brigid, we've got 4 minutes before we close today's session. Yeah, I'm being like this. I mean, it's never the case, but it's because I've got that other call at 11. So, right. First of all, thank you so much. It's been an incredible pleasure. I want to thank everyone for joining. I know people are watching live as well. I may have seen a couple of comments already. Brigid, you're a powerhouse and you know it. Thank you so much for sharing all of this incredible value with everyone else. I love the session. You're a great speaker as well. I just want to share that one, you know, empowering belief, share it with you because you were super engaging throughout the session. I haven't gone anywhere. I've been with you like, boom, I'm here. Brigid is speaking. So much knowledge as well. People, I want to invite you, if you have any other questions, anything else, reach out, connect with Brigid. She's actually going to tell us where she is. So Brigid, what I would love you to do, quick wrap up, and where do people connect with you? And then we say goodbye and we carry on with our day. Thank you very much, Brigid.
So you can connect with me on LinkedIn. You'll find me under Brigid Farrell simply, or you can follow our page AllTalk Training on LinkedIn also. So we share tips to help you be more confident and also to improve your professional English there. So I'm happy for anyone to connect with us.
Well, there we go, people. This is what the Speak to Sales show is about. It's not about just selling. It's about speaking with confidence, standing up. It's about equality, inclusion, you name it. It's about helping you to stand out, connect, and deliver your message, your greatness, as we like to say on this program. Brigid, thank you so much again. I want to give special thanks to Ada for joining us. Ada, thank you so much for creating this amazing connection. Love you for it. Amir, Eunice, for your question. Rashmi, as usual, you're amazing, Herman. Talita, hope to see you all again. Take care. We're going to be sharing the replay, people. Remember, get in touch. Feel free to drop any questions on the Facebook group as well. This is going to be available in there, and the replay is going to be sent via email. Anything else, keep in touch. Brigid, it's been a pleasure. I'll let you all go. Have a wonderful day, morning, afternoon, wherever you are in the world.
Ciao.
See you all, everybody. Ciao.
Ciao. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Amazing.
Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, people. And this is when we say goodbye. We all say goodbye. I catch you all later. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.